It was very close to me, and that's why I self-willed chairing this meeting. Anyway, he's my sponsor, and I'd like to have you help me welcome Danny.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm an addict, and my name is Dan.
Hi, Dan.
And I'd just like to welcome you to this meeting and welcome you to the World Convention here in Chicago. I'd like to welcome myself. This is my first World Convention, and I'm excited as hell to be here. This World Convention so far for me has been everything I thought it wouldn't be. The past few years, people come back to Chicago, from traveling to other conventions, and they say, yeah, I did this, and this happened there, and it was so beautiful because of that, and I came here with, not a bag full of expectations, but I had some ideas of what was about to be happening, and as usual, nothing happened the way I thought, and it worked out a hell of a lot better than I thought. This has been a real growing weekend for me. I've been coming in touch with some things of my earlier recovery, coming in touch with some things of recovery that I hope to be. Talking with people and seeing growth in them that I can see myself aiming for, and for me that's the way the recovery process works. I sit in meetings and I hear people sharing, and more often than not I can relate, and sometimes I can't relate just because someone's already been through something that I haven't, and they're growing from it, and like I just said, I look forward to that kind of growth, In the past, people have been real helpful to me in the program by being honest and sharing and being open with me, by not painting the picture pretty, by being real with me, and I'm going to try to do just that with you here today when I share. As far as my past goes, I'm an addict and I belong here, and I'm convinced of that. And believe it or not, I've been more convinced of my addiction since I've come to the fellowship than I was of it when I was using. I guess what I'm trying to say is I didn't realize how sick I was until I came here among some people who were getting better. And as far as my using past, I personally would just as soon leave it as I got high, and I got into some situations that aren't uncommon for we addicts, and I don't see a real need to go into a war story. And I guess some people expect that at a speaker meeting. People in the past have asked me, well, why don't you talk about your past? And I don't see much recovery in my using days, and that's why I don't talk about it personally. So, if that offends anyone, or if you were expecting that, excuse me. I don't see the recovery in it. As far as myself and Narcotics Anonymous and NA and me, I'd like to share something that's hit me between the eyes this weekend, and that is that the path I've come through recovery wasn't uncommon. Even this weekend prior to coming here, I was thinking, man, getting recovery here in Chicago, or getting recovery at the particular meetings I got it at, it was pretty unusual, just the way things turned out. And as we learn more about the disease and learn more about the fellowship around us, today I can see that path that I walked wasn't uncommon. Through sitting in the meetings this weekend, I found out that I wasn't the only one, or the people around me weren't the only ones to see that the first step doesn't read we're powerless over drugs, which is the way I had interpreted it for, I'd say, roughly my first 2 years. I always thought that I came here because of a drug problem, and that if I could just get the drugs out of my life, I'd be fine. And I don't know how to say this without offending anyone who helped me recover, but that's the way we interpreted it, and today I can see that we were really off base. And we read something real similar to this every week. It was in a little plastic binder like this, and this is how we open up the meetings. The guy who chaired the meeting the first night I came to a meeting is in the room today, and there was a small group of people in that room, and I don't think any of them probably even remember the day that I was there, but it's real clear in my mind, the feelings that went through my mind that night, and the shakes that ran up my spine that night, the insecurity that ran through my whole soul that night, because finally I was coming in touch with something that I had been putting off for a number of years. Honestly, communicating with another person. The way the disease manifested itself in me, I was pretty quiet. I tried doing whatever I could to fit in, but I wasn't real open about it. Not anything like I've learned here in NA. But I sat in that room that night, and they started the meeting just as we did here today, and they talked about what life was like for them. And mind you, just like as a note, I was the youngest one in the room at that time, and for quite a while there weren't many people my age who were coming around. At that time I was just 16 and real confused, a typical adolescent, I could say. And there were people in there in their 20s and 30s, and they had lived a life that I had not even thought of, because when I was using in high school and in grammar school, I didn't really think of what was going to be waiting for me outside the doors of those two institutions. But that night there they were sharing about what was going on and what brought them to the fellowship. And it caught me off guard, because one, no one told me what the meeting was about. I was sort of brought there undercover by a sibling of mine. And I got there and they opened it up, and basically, they spoke one by one. It was organized, but the honesty that they were hitting me with was almost scary, because I knew, just even from what was read at the beginning, that I was dealing with some people who had some experience in drug use, and they were talking about it openly with me, which I'd never been exposed to. I didn't know this kind of stuff went on, and I actually felt for a while that I was in the wrong place, and that didn't even last like through half the meeting, because as the meeting went on, I found out that although I didn't live the years that they had, and I hadn't struggled with the disease the way they had, and I hadn't been in the spots that they had or the institutions they had been in, I was relating too strongly to the feelings they had, the emotional part of the disease. I was right on base when people were talking along those lines. I was already relating, and by the end of the meeting, I had felt that this was something that I had to check out again. That night showed me that there was something more to offer there, and through the whole meeting, they kept telling me to keep coming back. So maybe that helped me too develop that. By the end of the meeting, the attitude of, yeah, I'll be back here. And at the end of the meeting, they called on me, and I don't remember exactly what I said, but I remember telling them that I would be back, and when the chairman had called on me, I felt my jaw fall to my lap, just because I was so nervous. It was like, these people had just identified me without even, directly doing it, without directly saying, you're an addict because you're here. That's the way I felt, because I was relating so much. And at the end of the meeting, I was just too awestruck with what had just happened in the past 2 hours. My whole life had just ended and begun in that time slot, and I told him I'd be back. Well, at that time, there was a lot of stuff going on in my life, and for the next 5 weeks I would be back there, whether I wanted it or not, because it was a way to deal with a situation that was going on. So I went to the meeting for the next 5 weeks, and I remember I go to the meeting and I tell the people, hi, I'm here, and I'm Dan, and I'm an addict, and just really feeling, real good about it. And I was on my honeymoon. I come to find out later that I was on my honeymoon. I never had anything bad to say about anything. I wasn't growing. I was just in that, that sort of frozen state where you've just found something neat, and it's like a new toy to play with, and you don't even have to grow to play with it. It's just there for you, And there I was, and I would never tell anyone at the meeting about the struggles I was going through with my peers. And even in the meeting, it was almost like they sensed it. Like indirectly they'd say, well, you got to give up your old playgrounds and playthings and playmates, and, well, that was fine for you guys because you're so much older and gosh, you're adults and, you got other problems and stuff. But I'm in high school, and that was the way I was looking at everything. Like I said, typical adolescent, and every time that they could justify another principle of recovery, I justify the opposite in my mind because of my age or because of my situation in life. And I don't know if that's real typical. I sort of think it is, though, because we're still unique, early on. But anyway, I go to the meetings, and a while later I went out and got stoned again. And I can't justify that. I didn't know how good I had it. Those few weeks I was clean. And I was brought out to the meeting the same weekend that I had gotten stoned. And I come to find out later that if I had told the driver that I had gotten stoned, things may have been a little different. But I sat in the meeting that night, and we got there a little early. And it was, I was totally terrified of what was about to happen because I knew that I could not sit in the meeting that night because I had known a couple of them because, I'd imagine not everyone kept coming back every week, but for the most part that group was stable. And I'd come back to the meeting that night and I was terrified of what was going to happen because I don't really remember what happened when someone said that they had gotten high. So there I was. I had to tell them because I knew that honesty was going to do it for me from what you guys told me about it. And for some reason, the two people that were there before the meeting were in another room, and I got into the meeting room, and for the first time since my recovery began, now this is like almost 2 months into my recovery, I said a prayer. And it wasn't no formal prayer. It wasn't anything that I've ever seen written. It was something just like, I fucked up real bad and I want another chance. I've hurt. And I didn't even know who I was praying to. I even said something along those lines, I think of, look, I don't know what's out there, but I screwed up again. And this is the only place that I felt I had a chance. And I need to try it again. And excuse me. The meeting got underway, and the chairman asked if anyone had anything to talk about. Excuse me, folks. And I very shakily raised my hand and told him that I had something to tell the group and that I had gotten high. And at this point, I expected all hell to break loose. You what? You what? You got high? Figuring they'd throw me up against the wall and see what else I had on me and shit. And call a narc squad. I didn't know. But no one even jumped up. No one even, dropped their jaw. They all just sat there as if I was to carry on, carry on with the honesty I had just started. And I was real emotional at the time. I've grown since then. Keep it light, keep it light. So I sat there and blubbered for a while and told them what happened. And at that time, I see at least two people that were in the room that night, and the understanding that was there in that room and the caring that was there in that room and the chance that was there in that room are the very things that keep me coming back to NA, because as I've participated in NA, in the functions, in the meetings, in the 12-stepping, and in the service structure, I think to myself, this is what I'm trying to provide for someone else, in what little way I can, that these very principles are what gave me life today. So needless to say, I wasn't put in jail that night. I was actually given the keys to get out of my own prison, as I've heard it said here before. The keys were confused, though. Like I said, I was still interpreting the first step as drug addiction, and I thought the only time I really had anything to talk about in a meeting was if someone was asking me to get high at school. It was like the only things I thought were relevant to talk about in meetings were things directly related to drugs, and because I didn't really understand what the program was about yet. And at that time, the fellowship here in Chicago was real small, and we were real scattered. Didn't really know what we were doing. I even shared in a meeting the other day that we thought we started NA. I found out later that the original people in Chicago here who started NA in Chicago thought that they had, the copyright on NA, so to speak, which is like a sign of the times back then. Anyway, it hasn't been real clear to me why things happen the way they do, but my recovery was full and is continued to be full of a lot of wonderfully weird things, things that still, I still get the carpet pulled out from under me as far as when I stop and look at what's going on in my life. And I can really be grateful today, I do remember telling the group that every week too, that I'm grateful to be here. And I don't say that as much as I used to, but I do remember that, telling them that I was grateful, because I'd go through the whole week. There was only that one meeting that I could get to each week, and I tell the group every week that I was glad to be there and it was good to see them. And even though after a while I got tired of hearing their same stories over and over, it was still really good to be part of that little group. A short while later, they asked me to be their treasurer and make their coffee. And I was totally flabbergasted by that. I was like, you want me to do it? Me? And, I felt really inferior. I felt inadequate. I didn't think I could make the coffee. And I know I couldn't be trusted with money. But I took the position. And I was involved. And from that time, I've been involved in NA in one way or another. And it's not always jobs with titles, and it's not glorious jobs. It's jobs that need to be done for the maintenance of this fellowship. And like I said, there's things that do drive me to continue. Those things that I got to feel that night when I needed to be accepted, and when I needed to be forgiven, and when I needed to be shown how to do it, because I couldn't do it on my own. And I keep coming back to meetings, and I'm still learning. See, I'm not the person I was when I came here, and I'm not even the recovering person I was 2 years ago. Recovery, just like the disease, is progressive, and there's times when I'm not as aware of that progression, or even of its presence. Sometimes I feel like I'm sicker than I was when I came in. And I guess I can feel that today too, because I wasn't, like I said, I wasn't aware of how sick I was when I was out there. I had to come here and be shown. I knew that something was wrong with me, but I needed it defined. And over the past few years, it's been defined to me. And it was at least 2 years before I understood, or before I really even read the first step for what it is, about being powerless over addiction. The unmanageable part of my life, that was what part of the first step I did work, I knew about that, but the rest of it I wasn't aware of until roughly 2 years ago. And some members came back from a convention down in Memphis and shared with me about what that was about, and it was almost like rebirth or whatever for recovery in NA. I had been recovering up until that time, and I was growing and I was learning, but a whole new world or a whole new door was open when that first step was explained to me. And it was really weird. It was like, here we were, meeting after meeting, and the fellowship had grown substantially by then here in Chicago, but I was still reading that step in my mind, just like confused. And as I got the message of NA, and as I learned what the program was really about, or as I understand it today to be about, I found out that it's not drugs that brought me here. It's not the people I was hanging with and the places I was at and the stupid things, that I was doing while stoned. It was the force inside of me, the part that's still in me, the part that brings me back here. It's that I call addiction. And I'd have to say the past year has been really educational for me as far as showing me more about the faces of addiction. Like I was saying, as far as the drugs and stuff, for a long time that was the face of addiction. As I saw it, that was what drug addiction was just the drugs. But through coming to the meetings, and even more importantly, through reflecting on myself, and at times taking other people's inventories and reflecting on them, I can see the face of addiction in a lot of different ways, and sometimes it scares me because I don't know if that part of addiction can be changed, when I start analyzing too much. But more often than not, when I can recognize and be aware of another kind of form that addiction's taken to me, it's almost like I can share it with someone and find out that they've been aware of it, that they know about that kind of addiction, or they know about how the disease manifests itself in that way. But it's almost like I feel like a 3-year-old, and I'm still just growing up into the world and learning about those little things that everyone else seems to know. Coming here to this convention this weekend has been a really humbling experience, just because of what I was talking about earlier, thinking that, the things I had been through in recovery were so unusual, because of the circumstances or the environment or whatever. But coming here and finding out that no, not unusual at all, that I'm just like a recorded tape that's played throughout the world or throughout the country or whatever. And as humbling as that is, it makes me feel real good, because I know that I am a part of it all. There's times in my recovery when I question whether or not I'm an addict, and these are my sickest times. And when I'm doing that, and I stop and I think about not so much of my drug use anymore, or my past as far as all that goes, but when I stop and think about my recovery and the struggle it's been, I can see that I am an addict, and that I belong here just because the way that I still can't control things about myself. I'm still real unmanageable. My lifestyle is not the way I would prefer it to be. It's not the way you guys show me it can be. I'm certainly not the person I want to be. But on the other hand, the people in the program have showed me that I can accept who I am, even though I don't necessarily like it, or I don't necessarily want it to be just like this today. Which is another thing that is pretty unique to this fellowship, is the self-esteem that you guys, were able to give me. And at times, I know I'm sometimes just stopped in my tracks, just because I realized that, a couple of years ago I never would have thought this. I never could have accepted that. There's a lot of working, or rather living, principles that you guys, have directed me to, that I just did not know about before coming here. So when I learn more about addiction, I'm learning more about my recovery, because it's only in knowing about the disease that I can, and it's a little bit frustrating. I want to share a little something here that I don't talk about much, but there's times when the newcomers give me more recovery than the people who were around when I came around. And I used to get inhibited by that. I used to feel resentful because these guys, they're getting a lot of good information sooner than I did, and they got a lot more meetings and, et cetera, just all kinds of bullshit like that. But then when I stop and think about it, it shows me then that the fellowship is working all the better, that the NA program is growing, and that I've got all the more reason to come back here. Because like when I hear a newcomer, being blatantly honest, almost like I was that night when I shared about getting high. When I hear a newcomer talking that honestly, it brings me right back to that night, when I was that honest and when I needed what you guys had and when I never questioned what I had, as far as whether or not I was an addict. That night I had no doubt, But there's times in my recovery since then, and I call these times complacency, when I don't feel like that, when I take for granted too many of the good things I have, the people around me, the meetings around me, the literature, the times, like this here, in a crowd of people who all can understand me, and I abuse it as far as I don't work with it, I don't develop it, I don't let it grow. And I've talked about it before with a particular friend in Michigan who shared with me once that he felt that recovery was a cycle. And I never thought about it like that. I was frustrated by it for a long time. After the honeymoon was over and all that stuff, and I'd be doing good for a couple weeks, and all of a sudden it was like nothing was wrong around me, but everything was wrong in me. And then I'd dig a little deeper and find a little something and bring it up, and I'd start to change it, and I'd be, working hard at this or that, and suddenly everything was to shit again inside me. And I found out that when I'm trying to stay aware of what's going on inside me, and when I'm trying to change it, it's not necessarily always going to work like that. If I can stay aware of it and try to change it, that's all real good, but excuse me. I've come in touch with a lot of things real recently, and sometimes awareness stops me from growing because I don't want to grow in that direction. I don't want to make that change yet. And I used to sit in meetings and I hear people talking about that. I would do my 4th and 5th step, or I've done my 4th and 5th step, but I won't do my 6th and 7th yet because I don't want to let go of everything. And I never used to understand that. I used to think, this is a sick motherfucker, What's wrong with him? Why doesn't he want to grow? And at that time I was really into growing, But I'm not always into growing. And I give myself a lot of shit because of that. There's times in my recovery when I've chosen to sit back on my laurels, I've done my share, I've done my duty, I've done my best, and I just sort of kick back. And trying to motivate out of that is probably the hardest thing I've come across in recovery. Trying to change that pattern or whatever. So this talk about recovery being a cycle, at times I agree with it, and at other times I question it, because sometimes that's whatever. Honesty is still a real problem with me because I've developed an image problem. I've always trying to be my best foot forward, and it's a lot easier for me to be in denial of where I'm at than to stay aware of it, like I was just talking about. And even a sponsorship relationship, it's easier for me to just paint a pretty picture, just like I did for those first 5 weeks. Everything is fine, nothing's wrong. And then when the shit hits the fan, it's like it catches me off guard, and it catches my sponsor off guard, you know, and it catches the people around me off guard because I don't ventilate it as it comes up, you know. I just stuff it. And I think that too is one of the faces of addiction as it's come up in my life, you know, that numbing things out and stuffing it. And that's something that today I'm trying to stay a little bit more aware of. Honesty is hard for me, you know, and when I can, I do, but more often than not, I choose not to because it's easier not to. And the program tells me about being honest and stuff and how good it is, and I know damn well what's good, but I still don't always practice that. But when I am growing, it's because I'm being honest, and it's because I'm trying, you know. I'd like to share a little something, probably the thing I'm going to walk home with from this convention, and that is a thought that was left with me at the end of a meeting Friday morning. The meeting was called NA History, and it was chaired by a gentleman who knew what he was talking about, I'll say that, as far as the history of NA, you know, and what was going on, and the struggles we've had as a fellowship and stuff. But the thing that he mentioned at the end of the meeting was, you know, as much as all this stuff was interesting, and, you know, it was educational and everything, he said the history that he wanted to be part of was the history that will be written 50 years from now. And I didn't understand it right away, but he went on to explain that as a fellowship, NA is changing the world. As a fellowship, changing the world. And suddenly, after this hour and a half of hearing all the shit we've been through, and this light note of it's all worth it, and it will continue to be worth it, it was just a real beauty. That was my spiritual awakening this weekend, that as an individual, I can't do anything. I can't correct the world, I can't change the crime, and I can't change the people, and I can't even take the guy out of the gutter outside, you know. But as a fellowship and as a group, you know, as a Monday night meeting, as a guy on the phone talking to a guy who needs to be talked to on the phone, whatever, there's a lot that we can do. And I want to be part of that today. I choose to be part of NA. NA has given me life, and it's a nice thought to think about what history will be written 50 years from now, you know, if we continue, you know, opening the door to the newcomer, and giving the newcomer a second chance if he needs it, you know. I've tried to help people, and I've let people help me, and it still confuses me how it works, you know, but it does work, and I'm grateful to be part of that working, you know. As far as the steps go and stuff, I work the steps when I need to, and I live the steps when I want to. You know, there's times when my life is so fucked up that the only thing that's going to pull me out of it is another 4-step inventory, you know, or make another amends, or turn it over again. You know, when I need to do that, I do that stuff, you know, and when I want to, I'll live a program. And this is a skill that I learned, and I continue to learn by attending meetings. Living the program is the challenge. You know, working the program because of need, that's a response in me. That's something that I think every addict has. When the trouble's up, you know, you react to it. And today I can react by working the steps or whatever. But the real challenge for me is to get the steps into a daily living situation, and I don't do that. There have been times in my recovery when I have done that, And I can look back and see that those were the peaceful times. Those were the times when I grew without pain. The saying about pain and growth, yeah, when you're in pain you'll grow just because that's the only way to get out of the pain. But I do know that when I'm living the program, I'm not necessarily in pain, and I am growing, and that's something that I've learned, not the hard way, the living way or the daily way. And when people, at the end of a meeting, when they hold hands and say the prayer and then they shout, "Keep coming back, it works if you live it," I still get a tingle every time. I still get that little spine chill that this is what's doing it. This is what's let me live happy today, and what's let me feel today, what's let me grow today. And to be aware of feelings and all that is one of those things that isn't necessarily mentioned at that first step meeting, that you will feel again, and maybe if they did tell me that at my first meeting, I wouldn't have come back the next week. But to be able to feel myself and to be able to feel what's going on around me is really nice, because running around, in that fog of addiction and being so caught up in the act of addiction, and I don't necessarily mean drug addiction, mind you, I'm talking about active addiction. I become numb to too many things, too many vital things. A while back I was talking with a friend, and this friend knows a lot about me, and in sharing, it was discussed how because of a change in my recovery, suddenly my spirituality had gone from something that I was comfortable with to something that I had regimented. Every morning down on your knees, say your prayers, get up, go into the day. Every night down on your knees, go to bed. And that was how I was getting by for a while. That was like the minimum. But through sharing with this friend, I found out that it doesn't have to be like that. That if I'm really looking for a higher power, and if I'm really seeking to do His will, and if I'm really, trying to grow in recovery, I need to see my higher power a lot more than twice a day. And I don't necessarily have to be down on my knees to see my higher power. And I had heard this stuff earlier in recovery, but have since become numb to it because of the lifestyle I picked up. And through talking with this member, I found out that I can look around and see God in a lot more things than just, my morning meditation. A butterfly, for example, that I saw yesterday. I was practicing, or not practicing, my second step, as someone here can attest to. I was out on the ledge the other day, looking around and chatting, and this butterfly came by, and I was able to see my higher power in that. Just a little thing that is making things all right. And the conversation I was having was really emotional, with this person. And there was a lot of questions running through my mind about, is this right or is it wrong, and what am I going to do about it, and okay, I've reached a decision, now is this right? And all of a sudden this little butterfly comes, just sort of floating by, and I finally found it, once again, I had found the peace that I found that night, when I was honest. And even in the past few weeks since talking with that person who sort of reopened up my spirituality, I found a lot more things that my higher power is doing around me. It's like if I can stop looking at all the shit and just start looking for the good, then I'm doing myself a favor. I'm doing all right then. But as far as participating here and everything, I was, real happy to be doing it and everything, and even fearful about it. And I generally wouldn't say that. I like to come in here acting like calm, cool, and collected. The old image shit. But I was real nervous this afternoon. And even yesterday. As things were going on, I kept finding my mind flipping into this moment now. What's going to happen tomorrow, and everything. And I was sitting in this meeting on surrender, and it was just an awesome feeling, because as the meeting was going on, I started just surrendering the situations around me, things that had been like blocking me up and fucking me up, and I'm sitting in this meeting on surrender, and you know, after the two speakers, then the audience started coming up and sharing, and it was like each of them were getting up there saying something that I could just have well been saying, you know. And those kind of things aren't coincidence. Like for me, that's my higher power saying, look, you know, what you're feeling is all right. You know, you're not unique. For gosh sakes, you're not unique, you know. And this is the solution. You got to surrender to it, you know. Surrendering to win, as you guys told me, as contradicting as it sounds and silly to me, it really does work, you know. I was able to find some peace yesterday and even again this morning, not just about speaking here today, but with situations in my life, you know. And I just realized I can't do everything about everything, you know. I can only take care of myself. And in my recovery, I've learned to do that, but I don't always do that. And I guess that's what recovery is about, is learning and then doing, you know. I didn't come in here having all the answers, you know, and I don't claim to have them today, but I'm learning and I'm getting better, you know, and I still fuck up, you know, I'm still making mistakes, but if I'm learning from them, then it's not such a big mistake after all, you know. It's all right then. But, I do want to keep coming back, you know, and want to see you guys coming back. And I can't personally reach out and hug everyone here in this convention, but if I could, I would, you know. There's times that the fellowship, as far as seeing how big it is and stuff, just it is the security I need, you know. I feel secure in NA today. It's big enough for me, you know. And I'm just real glad to be a part of it all. And I'd like to thank all you guys for giving me what I have today. Thank you.